Don't solve pain before you've heard it. When someone opens up, the reflex is to jump straight into advice, better sleep, new habits, a book that helped you. But often, the first words they share are only the surface. They're testing if you'll stay long enough for the rest. Psychology calls this emotional validation, the need to feel seen before we're ready for change. Rushing in with fixes can feel like dismissal, even when it's well meaning. Listening fully before offering solutions gives space for someone to actually process. You don't need the perfect answer. You need to be present until the real story comes forward. Ask if they want advice or just space. It's easy to confuse listening with fixing, but sometimes people want nothing more than a safe ear. A simple question, do you want ideas or do you just want to talk, shifts the power. It hands control to them, letting them decide the shape of the moment. That small choice creates emotional safety. Instead of assuming what would help, you let them guide you. Over time, this habit lowers defensiveness and builds trust, showing you are listening not only to their words, but to their needs. Protect what is sacred, even if subtle. A morning coffee, an inside joke, arranging your desk a certain way. These rituals may look ordinary, but they're stabilizers of meaning. Psychology calls this symbolic anchoring, small repeated acts that tell us life is steady. Ignoring or dismissing them can feel like erasing something deeply personal. Protecting these moments isn't about ceremony, but about noticing. When you honor what seems small, you show respect for what holds someone together. Sacred isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's woven into the quiet rhythm of daily life. Stay until the story finishes. When someone pauses mid story, the temptation is to move on, change the subject, or fill the silence. But often, the pause is where the real weight lives. Vulnerability doesn't come out smoothly, it halts, circles, hesitates. Staying present signals emotional safety. Trust grows when someone knows they won't be abandoned mid thought. The truth is often found just after the moment most people would turn away. Remaining attentive until the very end tells them your words matter, even if they take time. Pronounce names correctly, even if you have to ask twice. A name isn't just a word, it's identity. Mispronouncing or avoiding it may seem small, but it can communicate that the effort isn't worth it. Studies show that hearing one's name spoken properly increases belonging, while repeated mistakes erode confidence. Names carry culture, history, family pride. Respecting that isn't about perfection, but about care. Asking again, repeating until it's right, says you matter enough for me to try. That effort lingers longer than you realize. Zoom out. Will this matter in 5 years? A missed deadline, a clumsy phrase, spilled coffee before a big meeting. Small mistakes can feel massive in the moment. Stress narrows focus, a process psychologists call attentional narrowing, making problems seem larger than they are. Zooming out rebalances perspective. Will this matter in 5 years? Even 5 months? Usually not. The long view shrinks what once felt overwhelming. It's not about denying stress, but contextualizing it. Most problems fade. Resilience grows when we remember that truth in the moment. Introduce people by what they share, not what they lack. When you say she doesn't drink or he's not from here, you define someone by absence. That framing subtly casts them as outsiders before they've spoken. Instead, lead with common ground. She loves music. He's into photography. This invites connection instead of difference. Social identity theory shows that we bond faster over similarities than exclusions. Introductions are tiny but powerful. They set the tone of belonging, framing someone by what connects rather than what separates, builds bridges immediately. Curate memories, not just milestones. Graduations, weddings, birthdays are marked in calendars, but our minds don't store events by dates. They store emotion. The reminiscence bump shows we recall vivid, meaningful moments more than official milestones. A dinner with friends might matter more than a grand ceremony. Curating memories means pausing to notice, being present enough to encode the feelings into long term memory. Photographs can help, but attention does more. Life satisfaction depends less on big markers and more on the small, emotionally rich moments we choose to notice. Merge like a zipper, not a joust. On the road, zipper merging, taking turns instead of racing, reduces friction and speeds traffic. The same principle applies in life. Many treat shared spaces as contests, rushing ahead or blocking others out. But cooperation builds trust and flow. Every conversation, meeting, or shared project benefits when people alternate, listen, and let others in. Zipper merging is fairness in action, not dominance, but reciprocity. It reminds us that progress comes faster when no one is forced to fight for space. Don't interrupt joy with skepticism. When someone shares excitement, they're offering more than words. They're inviting you into their hope. Responding with, "Are you sure?" or "That'll never work," cuts joy at the root. Early joy is fragile. Skepticism too soon feels like rejection. Joy doesn't always ask for analysis, it often just wants witness. By matching their energy, even briefly, you protect that spark. Criticism can come later. In the moment of sharing, the kindest response is to let their enthusiasm breathe. Lead with questions, not conclusions. Our minds love shortcuts. When something feels off in conversation, we jump to assumptions. They must be angry. They must not care. But assumptions close doors, while questions open them. Psychology calls this attribution bias, assigning motives without evidence. Instead of "You're upset with me, aren't you?" Try, "Did I say something that came across wrong?" Questions invite clarification without blame. They soften tension and reduce defensiveness. Leading with curiosity makes space for truth, while conclusions often box people into corners they never chose. Hold the elevator even if you're in a rush. Every second counts when you're late. But choosing to hold the elevator door is a micro act of empathy. Social psychology calls these prosocial behaviors small sacrifices that benefit others. The choice costs you little, yet it communicates belonging and inclusion. When people witness or receive these acts, they feel moral elevation, a lift in mood and trust. On the surface, it's nothing but seconds, but beneath it, it's reassurance. Someone paused for me. I'm not invisible. We're sharing space together. Don't ask heavy questions when the credits are rolling. At the end of conversations, people are already transitioning mentally to their next task. Attention shrinks, emotional availability dips. Dropping "Do you forgive your parents?" as someone puts on their coat forces weight into a moment that can't carry it. Heavy questions deserve presence and time. Save them for the middle of dialogue, when focus is full. Timing matters as much as content. Ask too late, and even meaningful questions fall flat. Respect endings by keeping them light. Let someone stay mad without rushing them out of it. Anger is uncomfortable to witness. The instinct is to calm, fix, or minimize. But rushing someone out of anger often invalidates the boundary it signals. Emotions are not switches, they need time. Letting someone remain angry doesn't mean fueling it. It means respecting their right to feel. Psychology calls this emotional processing. Suppressing anger too quickly often leads to shame or shutdown, not resolution. Patience tells them, I can handle your full self, and that patience builds trust. Don't ask what's wrong if you won't sit with the answer. Are you okay? Can open a door. But if you're not ready to listen, it's better not to ask. Emotional responsiveness means not just noticing distress, but staying present through it. If someone takes the risk to answer honestly and you rush away, you've taught them to close up next time. Asking is a promise of attention. If you're distracted, wait. If you ask, commit. Sit with the full answer, even if it's messy. That's where real trust grows. Silence is room to breathe, not a gap to fill. Pauses feel awkward. The reflex is to jump in, lighten the mood, or change direction. But silence is not emptiness, it's processing time. In therapy, silence is intentional space, giving the brain room to catch up with feelings. Everyday conversations deserve the same respect. When someone pauses, let the moment stretch. Often the most important words come right after quiet. Silence communicates patience. It shows you're not rushing them, that you can stay present without demanding constant sound. Let people exit conversations gently. When someone says, well, anyway, or checks the time, they're signaling closure. Ignoring it to start a new topic traps them. Autonomy matters. People want control over their time. Forcing them to stay longer than they intend adds subtle resentment, letting them leave warmly. Good talking to you, let's catch up soon, makes the interaction sustainable. Respecting exits keeps relationships light. The best conversations aren't those that never end, but those that end gracefully, leaving both sides wanting more. Sitting alone can trigger self consciousness. The spotlight effect makes people believe others notice them more than they do. A simple smile disrupts that. It's a micro signal of inclusion. Weak ties, casual, non deep social connections, have been shown to boost mood and belonging. A smile says, you're not out of place here. It costs nothing but can lighten someone's entire day. It doesn't need to be an invitation or pity, just recognition. Sometimes 1 second of warmth is enough to make loneliness ease. Describe impact before intent. When words hurt someone, the first instinct is to explain, that's not what I meant. But impact lands before intent. Skipping straight to justification ignores their experience. Psychology shows emotions calm when validated, saying, I can see that upset you, addresses the impact, creating room for trust. After that, explaining intent is easier to hear. The order matters. Empathy before defense. It's not about taking blame for malice you didn't have. It's about showing you value their reality. Make space for the late bloomer. Not everyone blooms early. Some take longer to find confidence, success, or clarity. Social bias often favors the fast starters, overlooking those who grow later. But late bloomers bring depth, forged in struggle and observation. Developmental timing theory reminds us growth has no single schedule. Making space for late bloomers means resisting judgment and keeping doors open. When they arrive, they often bring resilience and perspective early bloomers lack. A world that only rewards speed misses half its flowers. Empathy expands when we ask, not assume. It's tempting to guess what someone feels, but until you ask, you're mostly projecting your own history. Empathy without asking risks distortion because your imagination is shaped by bias. True empathy is built on curiosity. What was that like for you? Or do you want to talk about it? This small shift prevents oversimplification and invites complexity. Research shows open ended questions create deeper understanding than assumptions. Ask first, assume less, and empathy grows where imagination alone would fail. Credit original sources. Ideas don't appear out of nowhere. Someone risked, tried, and often failed before offering something new. When we borrow without credit, we erase their courage. Source memory, our ability to recall where information came from, is fragile, and culturally it blurs easily. That naming the source restores dignity. It builds trust, shows fairness, and keeps overlooked voices alive. Whether in classrooms, workplaces, or art, giving credit is more than etiquette. It signals integrity. Erasure may be common. Honoring origins should be sacred. Being right is less important than being kind. Arguments often spiral, not because of facts, but because of the need to win. Defensiveness replaces listening. Correcting someone sharply may feel good in the moment, but often damages the bond. Kindness, by contrast, preserves the relationship. Confidence doesn't mean proving every detail, it means knowing when correction matters and when it can be let go. Kindness doesn't dilute truth, it amplifies it by keeping space safe for real dialogue. Over time, kindness is remembered more than accuracy. Your reaction becomes part of someone else's memory. Memories are stitched not just from events, but from how they were received. Neuroscience shows we recall emotion more vividly than fact. A child showing a messy drawing may remember not the lines, but the look on your face. An adult sharing fear remembers if you rolled your eyes or leaned in. This is co regulation, nervous systems shaping each other. Your reaction colors their memory permanently. Pause, soften, and choose carefully because you're helping write their emotional history. Live in a way that relieves, not adds emotional weight. Some people leave you lighter after a conversation, others leave you heavier. Psychology calls this emotional contagion, the spread of moods between people. Stress spreads, but so does calm. Living in a way that relieves weight doesn't mean avoiding honesty. It means showing up grounded, a steady tone, patient silence, or until validation can lift burdens rather than add them. You don't need to solve everything. Just avoid leaving people carrying more than they brought when they met you. Reply all only if every eye cares. Email overload is a modern drain on attention. Hitting reply all with a message relevant to one person is like shouting in a room full of people who didn't need to hear it. Attention economics reminds us focus is limited. Respecting it means only addressing the group when the group benefits. Otherwise, keep it direct. Communication is a gift or a burden, depending on whether it considers the listener's bandwidth. Fewer unnecessary pings create more space for what matters. Don't punish someone for being fragile. Fragility is often misread as weakness. Tears, overwhelm, or long recovery after stress can frustrate observers. But fragility often means heightened sensitivity, not incapacity. Responding with sarcasm or dismissal adds shame on top of pain. Psychology calls this emotional invalidation, and it harms more than it helps. Patience is stronger than criticism. Fragile moments pass more quickly when met with safety. Compassion doesn't mean lowering standards. It means not layering judgment where care is needed most. Model vulnerability so others can risk growth. Groups mirror their leaders. If leaders hide flaws, everyone else stays guarded. But when someone admits uncertainty or shares a mistake, it opens the door for others. Social modeling explains this. People learn behavior by observing. Vulnerability signals safety, reducing fear of judgment. A boss saying, I missed something, makes it easier for a team to own errors. A teacher sharing, I used to struggle too, makes questions safer. Growth begins when someone goes first. Vulnerability is permission. Don't be the first one to laugh at your own joke. Humor depends on timing and trust. Laughing at your own joke before anyone else does can signal insecurity, seeking reassurance instead of trusting the moment. Laughter is most powerful when it's shared, not forced. Psychology shows laughter is contagious when it arises naturally, not cued prematurely. Holding back a beat communicates confidence. It lets others decide. Humor travels farther when it's invited instead of demanded. Waiting shows patience, and patience makes the punchline land more strongly. Let others outgrow your memory of them. We tend to freeze people into roles: the shy sibling, the flaky friend, the stubborn colleague. Confirmation bias then filters everything they do through old labels. But people change through therapy, struggle, or time. Failing to update your view keeps them locked in a past they've worked hard to leave. Letting them outgrow your memory means noticing what's new, not clinging to what's old. It's not only a kindness to them, it's a clearer, truer way of seeing reality. Answer the call even if it's awkward. Unexpected calls can feel inconvenient. An old friend after years, a relative at an odd hour. The instinct is to let it ring and plan to respond later, but avoidance often feeds disconnection. Psychology shows silence is often interpreted as rejection, even if unintended. A brief answer, even just hey, what's up, can bridge a gap someone was brave enough to try crossing. Calls aren't always about efficiency. Sometimes they're about testing whether the bond still exists. Answering keeps it alive. Hold space instead of holding court. When someone opens up, it's tempting to jump in with your stories, your advice, your solutions, but that shifts the spotlight away from them. Holding space means giving the other person the room to speak and process without interruption. In psychology, this builds emotional safety, reducing the fear of judgment. Holding court makes it about you. Holding space makes it about them. The difference isn't silence, it's restraint. It's trust that they can find their way if given the air to breathe. Don't confuse silence with indifference. In difficult conversations, quiet often feels like coldness. But silence doesn't always mean absence of care. It may mean someone is overwhelmed, processing, or afraid of saying the wrong thing. Many people think internally before they speak. Psychology calls this internal processing. Reacting with frustration to silence risks misreading intent. Instead, give it time. Often, silence means they're taking you more seriously, not less. Stillness doesn't equal apathy. It can be the deepest sign of attention. Be humble about success. Success draws attention, but humility draws respect. Status signaling, subtly showing rank through words or behavior, often creates distance, but when people acknowledge luck, effort, and flaws alongside their wins, they feel more authentic. Humility doesn't mean shrinking yourself, it means carrying success without needing to prove it. It leaves space for others to feel seen too. In the long run, humility builds trust. People remember less what you achieved and more how you made them feel about themselves. Some kindnesses are invisible on purpose. Not all kindness asks to be noticed. Refilling a coffee pot, covering a colleague's mistake quietly, or defending someone who isn't present. These acts carry weight precisely because they don't demand gratitude. Psychologists note that invisible kindness lowers social pressure, making it easier to receive. When no thank you is required, it feels genuine rather than transactional. Over time, invisible kindness builds unseen layers of trust in groups. Even if no one notices, the person who needed it always does. Assume there's a rough draft behind every "I'm fine." "I'm fine" often isn't the final draft of someone's feelings. It's the version safe enough to say aloud. Psychology calls this emotional filtering. People soften truths until they trust the space. Listening for tone, body language, and hesitations helps you notice the draft behind the words. You don't have to pry. You just have to remain open. With patience, later drafts arrive, sometimes hours, sometimes weeks later, but they only come when the first one isn't dismissed. Offer specific help, not vague promises. Stress narrows decision making. When someone is struggling, let me know if you need anything adds pressure because it forces them to design the help themselves. Decision fatigue makes that feel overwhelming. Specific offers lower the barrier. I can bring dinner Tuesday. Do you want me to handle the call? These require only yes or no. Psychology calls this proactive empathy, anticipating needs instead of waiting for them to be spelled out. It transforms kindness from abstract to useful. Confidence is comfort with imperfection. Real confidence isn't flawless delivery, it's staying steady when flaws appear. A speaker who stumbles and smiles communicates more assurance than one who panics. A leader admitting, "I don't know yet," feels more trustworthy than one faking certainty. Psychology links this to self efficacy, the belief in one's ability to adapt. Confidence isn't about being bulletproof, it's about remaining calm under cracks. People trust what is resilient, not what pretends to be unbreakable. Imperfection, carried lightly, inspires more than polish. Turn envy into curiosity. Seeing someone succeed can sting. Envy says, "Why them, not me?" Left unchecked, it breeds resentment. But reframed, envy points to what you value. Curiosity asks, "How did they do that?" This is active comparison, shifting focus from jealousy to learning. Instead of staying in judgment, analyze the path. What habits, risks, or connections did they build? Envy shows you care. Curiosity shows you're willing to grow. The first drains energy, the second fuels it. The choice decides progress. Some things want witness, not repair. When someone shares pain, your instinct is to fix it. Offer advice, give steps, find solutions, but many times they're not asking for a cure. They're asking for a witness, to have someone sit with them in the weight without trying to make it disappear. Psychology calls this validation, acknowledging the reality of someone's emotion. Solutions can come later, but if you rush, you risk sweeping away what needed to be felt. Sometimes presence heals more than answers. Remember birthdays, even quietly. A short happy birthday text, a quick call, or even mentioning it later still matters. Birthdays aren't just dates, they're markers of significance. Remembering says, I carry you in my mind even when you're not in front of me. Psychology links this to relational closeness, the feeling that someone notices the small personal details. It doesn't need to be grand. Often the smallest gestures leave the deepest mark because they carry no pressure, only recognition. Remembering creates a subtle bond of care. Progress beats perfection. Perfection stalls growth because it demands flawless beginnings. Progress thrives because it welcomes imperfection. Behavioral science calls this momentum, the idea that small steps repeated consistently matter more than rare, perfect efforts. Missing a day or stumbling doesn't erase the path. The trap is believing flaws cancel worth. In truth, persistence through imperfection creates stronger, longer lasting change. Psychology shows confidence builds from showing up, not from waiting until you're perfect. Keep moving. Small progress outlives perfect intentions every time. Respect the pause before good endings carry weight. When someone lingers at the door, pauses before hanging up, or says, well, they're signaling transition. Ignoring this by launching into a new subject creates tension. Social psychology emphasizes autonomy, the ability to leave when ready. Respecting that pause, letting endings breathe, makes farewells gentle instead of forced. A simple, I'm glad we talked, or let's do this again soon, closes the moment warmly. Goodbyes shape memory. Leave them with ease, not with drag. Don't compete over suffering. When someone shares pain, it's tempting to compare. That happened to me too, and worse. But suffering isn't a contest. Comparison dismisses the uniqueness of their experience. Psychology calls this invalidation, minimizing feelings through one upmanship. True empathy listens without trying to outweigh. Pain isn't measured in hierarchy, it's measured in how deeply it shapes someone. Respect each story on its own terms. When you resist competing, you create space where their pain feels seen instead of overshadowed. Celebrate private wins. Not every achievement needs an audience. Sometimes finishing a hard task, sticking to a habit, or simply getting out of bed deserves recognition. Internal validation builds resilience. Internal validation builds resilience more than external applause. Psychology calls this intrinsic motivation, the drive that comes from within rather than from others' praise. When you learn to quietly celebrate yourself, you stop depending on approval to keep going. Private victories build silent strength. They remind you progress matters even if no one else notices. Listen for what isn't said. Conversations often reveal more through tone, silence, and hesitation than through words. Someone saying, I'm fine, while avoiding eye contact, may be voicing a deeper truth. Psychologists note that nonverbal cues carry most emotional weight in communication. Listening means tuning not only to words but to pauses, gestures, and rhythm. This requires presence, not assumptions. Often, what matters most is between the lines. Paying attention to what isn't spoken makes people feel deeply understood. Gratitude lands strongest when it's specific. Thanks for everything feels nice, but thanks for staying up with me when I couldn't sleep, or thanks for catching that mistake before it mattered. Sticks far longer. Specific gratitude ties the feeling to an action, embedding it in memory. Psychology calls this reinforcement. It strengthens bonds and behaviors. When someone knows exactly what mattered, they feel truly seen. Specificity turns gratitude from polite habit into meaningful connection. Words that highlight details are remembered far beyond general thanks. Let humor lift, not jokes can connect or wound. Humor that lifts creates belonging. Humor that cuts isolates. Sarcasm aimed at someone's flaws may feel playful to you, but land as pain to them. Psychology highlights this as disparagement humor, which increases social distance. In contrast, inclusive humor strengthens bonds by laughing with, not at. Humor is one of the fastest ways to build trust, but also one of the fastest ways to break it. Choose laughter that unites, not laughter that excludes. Respond before they repeat themselves. When someone says something twice, it's rarely because they forgot. It's often because they felt unheard. Responding before repetition communicates attention. Psychology notes that validation isn't about agreeing, it's about showing the message landed. Even a short acknowledgement, I hear you, prevents the loop of frustration that comes from feeling ignored. People repeat themselves when silence feels like dismissal. Responding early turns the cycle of doubt into a cycle of trust. Listening once is kindness, listening twice is rescue. Small consistencies outweigh rare intensities. A big grand gesture feels good in the moment. But psychology shows trust is built less on drama and more on steadiness. Checking in regularly, following through on promises, showing up on time, these small repeated acts outweigh occasional fireworks. Reliability is security. It teaches people they can depend on you, even when life isn't exciting. Over time, small consistencies shape reputation, while rare intensities fade. The daily habit of showing up is the most powerful unwritten rule of connection. Don't weaponize honesty. Honesty is valuable, but when used without care, it can become cruelty, disguised as truth. Saying I'm just being honest after harsh words often shifts responsibility from speaker to listener. Psychology calls this blunt communication style, low in emotional intelligence. It prioritizes expression over impact. Real honesty balances truth with empathy. It delivers clarity without stripping dignity. Honesty should illuminate, not wound. When truth becomes a weapon, it stops building trust and starts eroding it. Respect energy, not just time. People often think of commitments in terms of hours, but energy, emotional, mental, and physical, determines presence more than time does. A drained hour is worth less than an engaged 10 minutes. Psychology's concept of decision fatigue and cognitive load shows how depleted energy narrows patience and focus. Respecting energy means noticing when someone has little left to give. It's letting them leave early, saying let's pause, or understanding when quiet replaces conversation. Value presence, not just duration. Leave space for people to change their mind. We often expect consistency, but growth requires flexibility. When someone updates their view, it doesn't mean they were weak before. It means they and confirmation bias makes us lock others into their past opinions. But psychology shows that environments allowing safe reversals increase open mindedness. When you allow people to say, I used to think differently, you encourage learning over pride. Growth thrives in spaces where changing your mind isn't seen as failure, but as courage. Acknowledge effort, not just result. Results get celebrated, but effort reveals resilience. Praising effort reinforces persistence, which psychology calls process praise. Research shows it builds grit more than outcome praise. Saying, I admire how hard you worked on this, matters even if the result fell short. Celebrating effort tells people they are valued not only when they win, but also when they try. Over time, this creates environments where people take more risks, learn faster, and recover better from setbacks. Don't rush forgiveness. Forgiveness is powerful, but pressuring someone to forgive quickly invalidates their pain. Psychology highlights the importance of emotional processing. Moving too fast can lead to suppression, not resolution. True forgiveness emerges when hurt has been acknowledged, not bypassed. Allowing time for healing makes forgiveness authentic rather than forced. Telling someone, just let it go, rarely helps. Giving them the space to grieve, rage, or sit with wounds creates forgiveness that lasts rather than fractures later. Share credit generously. Few achievements are ever fully solo. Giving credit acknowledges invisible contributions and strengthens group trust. Psychology calls this collective efficacy, the belief that a team's efforts matter. When leaders share credit widely, people feel ownership and motivation. Hoarding recognition breeds resentment. Generosity with credit isn't losing status, it's gaining loyalty. Over time, people remember less who claimed the spotlight and more who carried others into it with them. Recognition multiplies impact when it's shared. Learn to sit with discomfort. Many conversations turn shallow because people rush away from discomfort, but growth lives in discomfort. Psychology calls this distress tolerance, the ability to remain present when emotions are tense, whether it's hearing feedback, discussing grief, or admitting mistakes. Staying in discomfort signals maturity. It doesn't mean enjoying pain, it means resisting the impulse to escape. By staying with difficult feelings, you model resilience and allow deeper honesty. Most breakthroughs arrive after the moment we most wanted to leave. Respect boundaries the first time. When someone sets a boundary, I don't want to talk about that, or please don't call after midnight. Testing it again communicates disrespect. Psychology notes that boundaries signal self protection, not rejection. Respecting them builds trust, while pushing against them erodes safety. You don't need to agree with a boundary to honor it. Listening once without resistance tells people they don't have to defend themselves repeatedly. Trust grows fastest where boundaries are seen, not negotiated endlessly. Curiosity beats judgment every time. Judgment closes doors. Curiosity opens them. When confronted with behavior you don't understand, choosing curiosity, what led them there, reduces defensiveness and increases empathy. Psychology calls this attributional charity, interpreting actions by seeking reasons rather than condemning. Judgment simplifies people into categories. Curiosity preserves their complexity, and in that complexity lies understanding. Curiosity won't excuse everything, but it makes space for dialogue instead of walls. Choosing curiosity transforms conflict into learning and strangers into possible allies. Rituals matter more than we admit. The small repeated acts, a morning walk, a weekly call, arranging your desk a certain way, may look ordinary, but often hold deep meaning. Psychology calls this meaning making, assigning significance to quiet habits. When disrupted, they can feel disproportionately painful because they stabilize us. Respecting someone's rituals is respecting their anchor. Protecting your own rituals is protecting your foundation. Life is shaped less by grand events than by the rhythms we trust. Rituals aren't trivial, they're sacred structure. Don't mirror negativity out of reflex. When someone snaps, sulks, or criticizes, the instinct is to match their tone, but mirroring negativity escalates instead of diffuses. Psychology calls this emotional contagion. Moods spread quickly, often unconsciously. Resisting the mirror means pausing before reacting, choosing steadiness instead of echoing anger. This doesn't mean accepting disrespect. It means deciding not to fuel it. Negative energy burns out faster when it isn't fed back. Calm is contagious to offer it, and the cycle breaks where you stand. Give people exits without shame. Not every plan or commitment works out. Forcing people to stay when they need to leave creates resentment. Psychology highlights autonomy as a core need, freedom to choose without punishment. Saying no worries if you can't, or we can reschedule, preserves dignity. It keeps relationships lighter instead of heavy with obligation. Exit doors shouldn't feel like betrayals, they should feel like respect. When people know leaving won't cost them care, they're freer to show up sincerely when they can. Don't interrupt stories with solutions. When someone tells a story, it's not always a request for fixes. Sometimes it's rehearsal, processing, or simply needing a witness. Interrupting with solutions cuts off that rhythm. Psychology calls this premature problem solving. It reduces connection and increases frustration. A better approach. Wait. Let the story land fully before offering thoughts. If they want solutions, they'll ask. Often the value is not in fixing, but in listening without grabbing the steering wheel too soon. Let joy stand untested. When someone shares excitement, a new idea, a plan, a little win, the urge to poke holes can arise. But joy in its early stage is fragile. Psychology shows early skepticism discourages creativity and risks trust. Instead of asking, but what if it fails? Ask nothing at all. Or better, mirror the enthusiasm. There will be time for critique later. For now, let joy breathe. Untested joy often grows stronger. Tested too soon, it may never return. Admit when you don't know. Pretending to know everything creates fragile authority. Admitting I don't know builds trust. Psychology's concept of intellectual humility links this honesty to stronger learning and relationships. People respect confidence in uncertainty more than false certainty. Saying I'll find out models curiosity, not weakness. It shows you value truth over ego. Over time, those who admit gaps grow deeper credibility. Knowledge grows not from knowing already, but from staying open enough to keep learning. Don't assume speed equals care. Quick replies and instant help feel caring, but not everyone can move fast. Slow responses don't always mean disinterest. They can mean overwhelm, caution, or limited energy. Psychology links urgency bias to stress. We equate immediacy with importance, but presence can arrive late and still matter. Care isn't measured in timestamps, it's measured in sincerity. Slow doesn't mean absent. Patience allows people to care in the way they can, not only in the pace we want. See the invisible labor. Much of what holds families, workplaces, and friendships together is work no one names. Planning, cleaning, remembering, organizing. Psychology calls this invisible labor, and it often goes unnoticed until it's absent. Noticing it, thanking it, or even sharing it builds fairness. When people feel unseen, resentment grows. Recognition isn't flattery, it's justice. Saying, I see how much you do, can mean more than grand praise. Invisible labor deserves visible acknowledgement. Avoid piling on when someone is down. When mistakes are obvious, it's easy to join criticism, But piling on multiplies shame without multiplying learning. Psychology shows social punishment amplifies withdrawal and reduces growth. One gentle correction is enough. Adding extra weight when someone is already low doesn't build accountability, it builds avoidance. Choose restraint. Don't add bricks to a load already heavy. Mercy often teaches more than echoing what the person already knows. Ask before sharing someone's story. People tell you things in confidence that may not be yours to spread. Even if harmless, retelling can feel like betrayal. Psychology highlights privacy as central to trust. Asking, "Are you okay? If I share this," shows respect. Stories are ownership, as sharing without consent removes someone's agency. Whether it's good news or struggle, the story belongs to the person living it. Guard it until they invite you to pass it on. Trust thrives in discretion. Assume complexity before simplicity. It's tempting to reduce people to one motive: lazy, selfish, careless. But human behavior rarely has single causes. Psychology emphasizes multi-factor explanations: stress, context, history, culture, all intersect. Assuming complexity means pausing before labeling, asking what layers may exist beyond the obvious. Simplicity may feel neat, but it flattens reality. Complexity restores humanity. People are rarely only one thing. Assuming depth protects dignity and prevents us from cutting others down to caricatures. Notice who's quiet, not just who's loud. In groups, attention drifts toward the ones who speak the most, but often the quietest hold insights left unheard. Psychology calls this availability bias, mistaking presence for importance. Pausing to invite the quieter voices creates balance and reveals hidden depth. Saying, "What do you can shift dynamics completely?" Leadership isn't amplifying the loudest, it's making space for the overlooked. Listening for silence is as vital as hearing sound. Don't confuse vulnerability with weakness. Opening up about struggle takes courage, not fragility. Psychology shows vulnerability builds trust by creating psychological safety. Weakness hides, courage reveals. When someone risks sharing honestly, they aren't asking for pity, they're showing strength. Through dismissing vulnerability as weakness discourages connection. Welcoming it creates bonds that outlast polished facades. Behind every moment of honesty lies bravery, not fragility. Apologize without conditions. "I'm sorry, but" isn't an apology. It's deflection. Real apologies acknowledge impact without attaching excuses. Psychology notes apologies repair relationships. By validating hurt, adding conditions dilutes the repair. A clean "I'm sorry for what I said" carries more power than any explanation. Explanations can come later, but only after acknowledgement. First mend the wound, then discuss the why. Without that order, the hurt lingers. Don't measure everyone by your yardstick. People carry different histories, resources, and struggles. Expecting them to move, grow, or react exactly as you would erases individuality. Psychology calls this false consensus effect, the assumption others share our perspective. Respecting difference means accepting multiple measures of success and resilience. Judging someone's pace by your own ignores the terrain they've walked. Empathy requires setting down your yardstick and noticing theirs. Protect enthusiasm in its fragile form. When someone begins a new hobby, project, or idea, their spark is delicate. Early discouragement often kills growth before it begins. Psychology calls this expectancy effect. People rise or shrink based on the signals they receive. Protecting early enthusiasm means offering encouragement, not critique. Even if they fail, the energy of trying matters more than the outcome. Every flame starts small. Protect it until it can withstand. Don't let kindness become performance. Kindness given for applause isn't kindness, it's currency. Psychology frames this as extrinsic motivation, behavior driven by reward. Real kindness doesn't require witnesses. It thrives in quiet moments where nothing is gained except the good itself. If the value of kindness dies when unseen, it was never true care. Performative kindness inflates ego. Authentic kindness builds trust. Choose the kind that survives without audience. Listen for patterns, not single moments. One comment rarely defines a person, but repeated themes reveal deeper truths. Psychology calls this consistency effect, identifying behavior over time rather than through isolated events. Instead of judging instantly, notice the pattern. A single rude remark may be stress. A repeated pattern of dismissal reveals character. Listening for patterns prevents overreaction and helps see people for who they are, not just what they were in one moment. Give credit even when it costs nothing. Many moments of acknowledgement cost only a sentence. That idea was theirs. They made this possible. Yet withholding credit is common. Psychology ties this to ego preservation, the instinct to hoard recognition. But credit freely given strengthens bonds, motivates others, and builds trust. The cost is small, the return is loyalty. Credit that costs nothing often means everything to the one receiving it. Separate the person from the moment. People sometimes act poorly under stress. Reducing them to that one moment erases their full humanity. Psychology's fundamental attribution error shows we often blame character rather than context. Separating the moment from the person allows accountability without condemnation. Say, that was a harsh comment instead of you're cruel. Behavior can be corrected. Identity should not be erased by one instance. Seeing distinction preserves dignity while still holding truth. Choose presence over perfection. People rarely remember if you had the right words, the flawless response, or the perfect timing. They remember if you were there. Psychology shows that emotional presence shapes memory more than accuracy. Perfection creates distance. Presence creates warmth. A stumbling I'm here outshines a polished but absent performance. Life's unwritten rule. People value presence far longer than they remember perfection. Don't turn every conversation into advice. Sharing wisdom feels generous, but constant advice giving steals space. Sometimes people want listening, not lessons. Psychology calls this unsolicited advice problem. It makes others feel incompetent or unheard. Advice should be invited, not assumed. Listening first, asking, do you want my thoughts? Protects dignity. Advice given sparingly carries more weight than advice given constantly. Presence is often more healing than instruction. Celebrate growth you didn't witness. When someone changes, it often happens outside your view. Recognizing progress without needing proof builds trust. Psychology shows affirmation motivates further growth. Saying, I can tell you've been working on this, acknowledges unseen effort. Growth doesn't need an audience to be real. Celebrating it anyway validates the invisible struggle that led there. What you notice shapes what continues. Let endings be complete. Dragging out relationships, projects, or conversations past their natural close drains energy. Psychology highlights closure as essential for emotional health. Allowing endings creates space for beginnings. Saying goodbye with clarity rather than clinging respects both parties. Endings don't erase meaning, they honor it. A clean end carries dignity. A forced continuation creates weight. Respect the finish line. Share silence as comfort, not absence. True closeness doesn't require constant words. Sitting in silence without tension shows deep safety. Psychology links this to secure attachment, the ability to rest without needing performance. When silence feels like connection, not gap, you've built something rare. Don't rush to fill quiet with noise. Sometimes the strongest bond is simply existing side by side without demand. Don't shame small needs. Asking for a glass of water, a quick message, or company for a short walk might feel trivial, but small needs matter. Psychology calls this microvalidation. Meeting little requests builds security. Dismissing them as unimportant communicates neglect. Respecting them communicates care. People don't always need grand support. Often it's the smallest yes that carries the heaviest reassurance. Avoid gossip disguised as concern. Talking about someone's struggle without their presence often shifts from care to entertainment. Psychology links gossip to in group bonding, but it corrodes trust long term. Genuine concern is shown directly to the person, not behind their back. Ask yourself, would I say this if they were here? If not, it's not care, it's performance. Concern without presence is gossip wearing a mask. Respect the weight of first impressions, but don't freeze them. First impressions shape perception quickly. Psychology calls this primacy effect. Early encounters anchor our view, but freezing people in those first snapshots denies growth. Allow initial impressions to guide caution, not to dictate permanence. People change. The person you first met is rarely the full story. Respect the wait, but allow the re. Let people teach you who they are. Assumptions cut connection before it begins. Instead of projecting expectations, let behavior and words reveal truth. Psychology calls this reducing projection, separating your imagination from their reality. Asking, listening, and observing over time builds a clearer picture than assumptions ever could. People feel respected when you let them write their own story instead of you writing it for them. Don't confuse consistency with monotony. Reliability may seem boring compared to spontaneity, but psychology shows trust builds from predictability. Knowing someone will show up, follow through, or stay steady matters more than surprise. Consistency doesn't kill connection, it feeds it. Monotony is lifeless repetition. Consistency is a rhythm that gives space for trust, safety, and even joy. Let people change roles in your life. Someone who was once your teacher may later become your peer. A peer may become your guide. Psychology notes relational flexibility. Allowing roles to evolve creates stronger bonds over time. Resisting this change locks people in outdated positions. Accepting it lets relationships breathe. Growth changes dynamics. Allow roles to shift, and you'll keep connections alive rather than frozen in the past. Don't measure kindness by scale. We often think big gestures matter most, but psychology shows small, consistent acts carry greater long term weight. Holding the door, sending a short message, checking in quickly, these compound into trust. Kindness doesn't need spectacle. A single considerate act, repeated over time, outweighs a rare grand gesture. True care isn't about scale, but about frequency and sincerity. Assume effort is happening beneath the surface. When people seem stuck, It's tempting to believe they're not trying. Psychology notes that growth often looks invisible until results appear. Change happens in small private steps, rethinking habits, fighting internal battles, preparing silently. Assuming no effort breeds judgment. Assuming hidden effort creates patience. Trust that what you can't see may still be unfolding beneath. Don't let pride block repair. After conflict, the hardest step is often the first, reaching out. Pride whispers to wait, but psychology shows delayed repair increases distance. Simple bridges, can we talk? Or I miss our rhythm, often reopen doors. Repair matters more than winning. Pride may feel strong in the moment, but connection outlives ego. Value listening as much as speaking. Many equate communication with expression, but psychology reminds us listening carries equal, if not greater, power. Active listening validates emotions, lowers defensiveness, and builds intimacy. Speaking without listening creates noise, not dialogue. True connection is balanced. Your words matter, but their story deserves equal space. Let people surprise you. Locking others into fixed roles or expectations blinds you to their growth. Psychology calls this expectancy bias, assuming past behavior predicts all future action. Allowing surprise means leaving room for reinvention. The shy friend may lead. The rigid coworker may show creativity. People often outgrow the boxes others keep them in. Leave room for surprise and relationships become richer. Protect trust with small choices. Trust isn't shattered only by betrayal. It's chipped away by small careless acts, broken promises, dismissive remarks, missed details. Psychology shows reliability is the foundation of safety. Protecting trust means honoring even the smallest commitments. Every I'll call you back kept builds the structure stronger. Every lapse erodes it. Trust grows or breaks in small daily choices, not just dramatic moments. Recognize when presence is enough. We often overcomplicate support, searching for perfect words or solutions. Psychology shows presence alone regulates emotions, a process called co regulation. Sitting nearby, offering a calm body language, or simply not leaving speaks louder than any script. You don't always need answers. Sometimes presence is the most profound support you can give. Don't mistake resilience for absence of struggle. Strong people may appear unshaken, but psychology reminds us resilience doesn't erase pain, it manages it. Assuming they're fine because they cope well can isolate them. Even resilient people need recognition and care. Behind composure may be exhaustion. Respect resilience, but don't assume it means invulnerability. Ask anyway. Listen anyway. Leave people lighter, not heavier. Every interaction leaves residue. Psychology highlights emotional contagion. Your tone and energy linger after you're gone. Strive to leave people lighter with reassurance, laughter, or calm. Avoid adding unnecessary weight through criticism, drama, or constant negativity. Being someone who lifts rather than drains is one of the strongest unwritten rules of connection. Live as if your reactions write someone else's memory. At the end, what people carry isn't just what you did, but how you made them feel. Psychology shows memory encodes emotion stronger than fact. Your reaction, whether to their mistake, success, or vulnerability, becomes part of their story. Choose care in those moments. Live as if your responses will echo in someone else's memory, because they will. That echo may become the way you're remembered.